Being able to quickly identify any navigation problems in real time is essential for fixing bugs in any AI system. Unreal Engine provides us with a tool for doing all this and more, called the Gameplay Debugger. In this video, we'll activate the Gameplay Debugger and take a closer look at what useful information it can tell us about the AI navigation system. Before we go any further, we should probably make sure that you can actually activate the debug, which would be useful. If you don't have a US keyboard layout, like myself, there's a good chance that the Gameplay Debugger isn't actually bound to a key by default. Open the Project Settings window and navigate to Engine and then Gameplay Debugger on the left-hand side. Looking at the input rollout, check the activation key is actually bound. I have a UK keyboard layout and I've bound this to apostrophe as I find that useful. Note if you're also using a similar keyboard layout, apostrophe is previously bound to the console, so you'll need to rebind that to a different key. You can do that now by once again looking on the left-hand side and going to Engine, Input, and scrolling down until we see the console rollout. In the console rollout, there'll be a single option, and you can change this to whatever you'd like from the dropdown. With those changes made, we can now close the Project Settings window and return to the viewport. Now we can run the game by pressing play in the toolbar or pressing Alt-P. With the game running and our AI character happily running around the space, let's activate the Gameplay Debugger by pressing whichever key we bound it to previously. Make sure you're looking towards the AI character as you do this. You'll see this puts a lot of information on screen, and a lot of it is constantly updating. To make our lives easier for the moment, let's pause the game by either pressing the pause key on the keyboard or the pause button in the toolbar above the viewport. Let's start by looking in the top right-hand corner of this debug window. This highlights the debug actor that is currently selected. In this case, it's our only AI character. However, as we built more complex scenes and multiple AI, it's good to be able to confirm which character is actually selected. Note that you can also see an icon above the AI character's head in the world. Let's move over to the left-hand side now, and we can see we have a cheat sheet reminding us of all the different keys we can press to toggle various functionality within the Gameplay Debugger. We're reminded which key we have bound to the Gameplay Debugger itself so that we can toggle it on and off, and we can use the numpad to cycle through the various categories. We can press Ctrl and tilde to toggle the HUD on and off, and we can press Ctrl and tab to toggle the debug messages on and off. Below that, we have the most important features within the Gameplay Debugger: NavMesh, AI, Behavior Tree, EQS, and Perception. We'll return to these shortly. For now, let's unpause the game by pressing the pause key once more, and pressing Tab to switch to the spectator view. You'll notice that in the cheat sheet area, the spectator text has turned green, indicating it's active. Now we can move the camera around in much the same way as the viewport. I'll reposition the camera to get a good view of the AI moving around the level. Note you can also use the mouse wheel to speed up or slow down the movement rate of the camera, just like in the normal editor viewport. If you return once more to the various categories, let's begin by toggling the ones we want on or off. For now, we want to focus on NavMesh, so I'll press 0 on the numpad. And then I'll press 1 to toggle the AI section off, and I'll press 2 to disable the behavior tree section. With just the NavMesh section toggled on, we can see the area of the NavMesh that the AI is currently using at the moment, and as it moves through the various locations, we can see that different sections of the NavMesh become active. Now, let's disable the NavMesh category by pressing 0 on the numpad, and enable the AI category by pressing 1 on the numpad. Once again, I'll pause the game by pressing the pause key, so we can look at the information without it rapidly changing. The AI category gives us a bunch of useful information that we can use to verify things are working as we expect. It begins with the controller name. This refers to the AI controller that the AI is using, and we can see that it is indeed using our AIC_third-person character controller that we created. We can also see which pawn is being controlled. In this case, it's our AI_third-person character, as expected. We can also see which movement mode it's using, which mesh component is currently being used, what nav data it's using, and the current status of its path following. Note the sections below will be explored later. In this video, we took our first look at the Gameplay Debugger. We learned how to activate it and how it can be used to monitor the AI's actions in real time. Finally, we selected the NavMesh category using the numpad and observed the information it provided.